A stone block heavier than 100 elephants, and it fits against the next one with a kind of laser precision. This is about 25 structures, megalithic structures, built with engineering that seems impossible. It defies what we assume about ancient history. By the end, you see a pattern, a hidden pattern, across the globe. It suggests a forgotten chapter, a chapter in human ingenuity. We look at how the stones were cut. They have a machine-like smoothness, and they were moved across distances that stagger modern engineers. How did cultures do this? Cultures separated by oceans, by millennia, how did they achieve such similar precision, such breathtaking precision? What does their mastery say, their silent mastery? What does it say about our place in time? Are we looking at the work of human hands, patient human hands, or are we looking at echoes of a lost science? The journey starts with the most iconic mystery, the most iconic one of all, and it spirals out from there, out to places you've never imagined. What do you believe a civilization can forget? What is possible for them to forget? It's just there on the horizon, this mountain of geometry, the Great Pyramid at Giza. It's a tomb, but it's more than that. It's an engineering statement, carved in stone. They placed over 2.3 million blocks. Each one averages 2.5 tons. That's the weight of a large truck. But the real thing isn't the mass, it's the mind behind it, the meticulous planning. This structure is aligned to true north. The error is just 3/60ths of a degree. The base is a near-perfect square, level to within an inch, across an area bigger than 10 football fields, and then the joints, the original outer casing stones. Most are gone now, but they were fitted together. The gaps were so thin you couldn't slide a piece of paper through. That's the kind of precision you get in a machine shop. Not with copper chisels and stone hammers. Modern engineers look at it. They speak with respect and with bafflement. The traditional theory uses long, sloping ramps. But that creates logistical nightmares. The ramps would be immense. Their volume would rival the pyramid itself. So other ideas have been floated. Internal spiraling ramps. The use of water channels, even speculative things, sound techniques, vibrational techniques, lost to time. Each theory tries to solve the same puzzle. A puzzle of physics and manpower. It seems to push at the very edge of the possible, and that leaves us with the foundational question. Does this show the absolute pinnacle of organized human labor? Sheer will, decades of effort, or does the silent perfection of its form whisper something else, a different kind of knowledge, a technical understanding so refined that from our distant vantage point, it doesn't look like history, it looks like mystery? This iconic wonder sets the stage, because if this was possible, what else was built that we haven't fully comprehended yet? The wind up there in the Bolivian Andes, it's a quiet place, a different kind of quiet. It moves across the Altiplano over these stones at Puma, Punku. It's not a complete structure, it's ruins. It looks less like a building and more like something was shattered. These are massive blocks of andesite. That's a stone harder than granite. They're scattered like something threw them, but then you look closer. The chaos has an order to it. There are these H blocks. They aren't just rectangles, they're precise geometric shapes. The complexity of the cuts, it makes you stop. The surfaces are perfectly flat, polished smooth, almost like a factory made them. They have these sharp 90-degree interior corners, and there are notches, channels, all cut with a consistency that feels like they used a template or a tool we just don't understand. This was the Tiwanaku culture. They lived here over 1,000 years ago. They're credited with the site, but what we know about their technology and what we see in these stones, there's a huge gap. Working andesite today requires diamond-tipped tools. To think they got these mirror finishes, this mathematical precision, with stone hammers and copper chisels, it's hard to believe. Experts look at these blocks and talk about precision engineering. They show the grooves, perfectly straight, perfectly parallel. There's one stone with a series of identical holes drilled into it. Cylindrical holes, uniform in depth and diameter, spaced with a regularity that means the drill bit didn't wander. It means steady, immense pressure. So the question is physical. What tool did this? What process created these interlocking forms that fit together so exactly? Quarrying a giant block is one thing. Turning it into a complex, modular building component with the accuracy of a machine part, that's something else. To stand in front of the H-blocks at Puma, Punku, is to face a reality that feels disconnected from history. It makes you wonder if there was a sophisticated stoneworking science here, a science of cuts and angles and polished surfaces, a technical knowledge so complete that when the civilization ended, the technique was lost. All that's left are these silent, impeccable stones, like a cryptic signature. If a method like that could shape andesite with machined perfection, then what other stones in other parts of the world might have the marks of a similar forgotten craft? The stones at Puma Punku are one thing, but there's another place, a plateau in Lebanon, the Roman temple complex at Baalbek, columns, courtyards, but the real thing is in the foundation. At the base of the Temple of Jupiter, a wall built from 3 stones, the Trilithon. Each one is about 64 feet long, 14 feet high, 12 feet deep. Each one weighs around 800 tons, that's 200 elephants in one block, and there are 3 of them, placed side by side. The joints are almost invisible. The Romans built their temple on top, but the question is, did they put them there or did they find them there from someone older? The Romans were engineers. But moving an 800-ton block over a mile, lifting it 20 feet, slotting it perfectly, that pushes even their capabilities to the limit. Modern engineers say moving that mass is a logistical masterpiece. Even with today's cranes, it's a monumental challenge. So how was it done 1,500 years ago? Archaeologists admit it's a puzzle. The explanation is ropes, wooden rollers, levers, thousands of laborers, but the coordination, the risk of cracking. The friction, the terrain, it makes the mind reel. The Romans left no blueprints for this scale, and then, not far from the temple, the mystery gets deeper. In the quarry, there's an even larger stone, the stone of the pregnant woman, cut but never moved, over 1,000 tons. It sits there, partially detached. A testament to an ambition that outstripped the Trilithon, a declaration of intent that was abandoned. Looking at it, you wonder, what system, what confidence made them start cutting a block that size? The Trilithon and this stone, they force a confrontation with a physical reality. It wasn't just about beauty or worship, it was about mastering weight and distance on a superhuman scale. If they could move 800 tons here, what other feats of transport were once possible? That are now lost. Sacsayhuamán is this fortress above Cusco. Its walls are famous. They aren't straight lines, they're these giant zigzag teeth built from limestone blocks. And the blocks are enormous. Some are 20 feet tall, hundreds of tons. They look like part of the mountain, but the size isn't the strange part, it's the fit. How they fit together. This is polygonal masonry, taken to an extreme. Each block is an irregular shape, a polygon with its own unique sides and angles. And each one is carved to lock with the ones next to it. No mortar. The joints are that precise. For centuries, people have said you can't slide a razor blade in there. Not even paper. It doesn't feel like a wall. It feels like a 3-dimensional stone puzzle, assembled by a master. The Inca built this in the 15th century. Their empire was highly organized, famous for roads, for terraces. But Sacsayhuamán is something else, a different skill. So how did they do it? The traditional view is patience. Trial and error. A stonemason would shape a block roughly, then lower it into place, mark the high spots, lift it, grind those spots down, then do it again. Over and over, it demands huge labor and a kind of spatial reasoning to visualize how these complex shapes connect, but some details complicate that. Many stones have these beveled edges, a shallow groove carved around the perimeter. It's not just decoration, it creates a tight seal along the visible edge. While allowing for slight imperfections in the center, a clever trick, good for looks, good for structure. Then there are other theories. Local legends talk about a plant-based liquid. Something that could soften stone, let workers mold it like clay, let it harden again. No conclusive evidence for that, but the legend shows the mystery. The walls presented a mystery even to those who came after. What's clear is the engineering, the zigzag design, the interlocking stones. They weren't just for show. This region is seismically active. These walls were built for earthquakes. During a tremor, the polygonal blocks shift. They settle, they don't collapse. They dance with the earth. A rigid, straight wall would shatter. So here, art and engineering are the same thing. The beauty of those seamless curves is also a feat of survival. It makes you think, if the Inca perfected this joinery, this way of making stones hold each other through geometry alone, could other cultures have found the same principle? Could this perfect, mortarless fit be a signature, a lost architectural idea, appearing in lands an ocean away? Sacsayhuamán was built by an empire. Then, in the 20th century, there was one man. A reclusive Latvian immigrant, Edward Līdzkalnis. In the humid heat of Florida, he started a secret project. He worked alone, mostly at night, from the 1920s to the 1950s. He quarried and carved and positioned over 1,000 tons of coral stone by himself. He called it Coral Castle. The scale is one thing, but the precision is what's hard to believe. He made massive chairs, tables, a crescent moon, and a 9-ton gate. This gate was a perfect piece of engineering, a single slab balanced on a metal rod and an old truck bearing. Balanced so well a child could push it open with a finger. For decades it swung without a sound, a silent marvel. Then the bearing seized in the 1980s. A team of engineers came with a 20-ton crane. They struggled to lift that stone, to reset it. They were baffled by how one man had achieved that balance. Līdzkalnis also put up monoliths. Some weighed 30 tons. He aligned some with celestial events, a Polaris telescope, a sundial that told time accurately. Stones to mark the solstices. When people asked how he did it, he was cryptic. He said he understood the laws of weight and leverage. He said he knew how the Egyptians built the pyramids. He talked about the secrets of the ancients, about magnetism and the movement of the stars. He left no real journals behind, just these monumental stones. The standard explanation is block and tackle, tripods, clever leverage. But engineers and visitors walk through his work and they feel a disconnect. How did a man 5 feet tall, 100 pounds, with a 4th-grade education, manipulate that much mass with such finesse? Did he, through intuition or just relentless trial, stumble on a forgotten principle of physics? A simple method of counterweight and pivot that others had mastered long before. Coral Castle is a modern echo of those ancient mysteries. It bridges the gap between the monumental works of lost civilizations and the modern world. It suggests that knowledge, the knowledge to move mountains with minimal force, might not be entirely lost. Maybe it's just waiting to be remembered. If one man in the 20th century could come that close to replicating those feats, then the astronomical alignments of far older sites, they seem less like an accident. More like a deliberate language, a global language written in stone and sky. Deep in the sand at Abydos, there's a place called the Osireion. You have the main temple up top, built by Seti I. Then you go down behind it into this sunken hall. It's flooded. It feels separate. The temple above is sandstone carved with hieroglyphs. the Osireion is different. It's made of these huge red granite blocks, massive pillars, roof slabs over 100 tons each. The style is stark. It looks more like the Valley Temple by the pyramids than a New Kingdom tomb. It's truly megalithic, and there's the water. The whole structure is below the water table. It was probably meant to be flooded to represent the primordial waters. But that creates a problem. If it was built at the same time as Seti's temple, why put it somewhere that would definitely flood? Why use granite, which is so much harder to work, when sandstone was the standard? The logistics seem deliberately hard. That's where the dating argument starts. The standard view is it's a cenotaph for Osiris, built by Seti or his son Ramesses. They point to style and religious purpose, but other researchers see the architectural disconnect. They propose something radical. What if the Osireion isn't from the same time as the temple? What if it's much older, a piece of a more ancient, advanced phase of building that Seti just found and built around? They say the weathering on the granite, the sheer scale, the engineering differences point to a different era. To stand in that hall is to feel time shift. You're looking at two architectures, two philosophies in one place. One is ornate, covered in stories. The other is silent, speaking only through the size of its stone and the precision of its joints. It's not just about who built it, it's about when. The Osireion asks a question that echoes in archaeology. Can a civilization find ruins from a predecessor and build on them, making the older work look like their own? If so, our timeline might have deeper foundations made of granite. And if one site's age is debated, what about another, where the stones themselves seem to defy the landscape they came from? Siberia is extreme, it's vast, it's silent, and it's brutally cold. In the remote mountains of Gornaya, Shoria, a place so isolated it feels like the edge of the world, there are stones that don't belong. They aren't just boulders, they're colossal slabs and blocks of granite. Some are estimated to weigh over 3,000 tons. That's heavier than the largest stones at Baalbek. They're scattered across a mountainside. It looks like a ruin, chaotic but also strangely ordered. Many have flat faces, sharp edges, what look like right-angled cuts. Some look deliberately stacked, like the crumbling foundation of something unimaginably large. The scale is staggering, but the location makes it profound. This isn't a fertile river valley. It's not a sacred plateau. It's a harsh, inaccessible wilderness. So the idea that an ancient culture would choose this place and have the capability to work granite on this scale, it challenges every conventional map of early human civilization. Now, the debate around these megaliths is fierce, unresolved. On one side, many geologists argue this is a spectacular natural formation. They point to glacial activity. Over millennia, glaciers can fracture rock along natural plains. That creates what look like cut surfaces. Freezing and thawing cycles, the immense pressure of ice, it can produce blocks that seem geometric. It's a compelling argument from a geological standpoint. Nature is a powerful sculptor, but other researchers, explorers who have visited the site, they aren't so sure. They document features that seem to defy simple glacial explanation. They show photographs of what look like clear 90-degree corners, of massive, rectangular blocks perched on top of smaller stones, forming a kind of crude masonry. They point to sequences of stones that appear aligned, not randomly dumped. One researcher on an expedition described it as walking through a giant's building site after an earthquake. The sense of intention, he said, was palpable in the geometry, and the sheer number of these geometric forms in one area, that's what fuels the controversy. Could glacial action produce so many right angles, so many flat planes, in such a concentrated space? This isn't just an academic dispute, it's a confrontation with a possibility. If these stones are artificial even partially, then our understanding of prehistoric Siberia is incomplete. It suggests a culture, or perhaps several, with a mastery of stone and logistics. A capability that allowed them to operate in an environment we consider marginal. It pushes the boundaries of where we think advanced engineering could have taken root. So the Gornaya Shoria megaliths, whether natural or not, they force a question. How do we distinguish the hand of time from the hand of a builder when both work on a monumental scale? And if this remote, frozen corner of the world might hold clues, then where else should we be looking? In landscapes we've dismissed as merely wild, Gornaya Shoria is quiet. But there's another kind of silence out on an island in the Pacific, Easter Island. It's a tiny place more than 1,000 miles from anything else. And there, the Rapa Nui made almost 900 moai. They're not just heads, they're full statues. Some are over 30 feet tall, weighing more than 80 tons. The faces are the top part. The rest of the body is usually buried, set down into the ground. The hard part wasn't just carving them, it was moving them. Across miles of rough, hilly land, from the quarry at Rono-Raraku to these platforms around the coast called Ahu, so you have an 80-ton block of volcanic stone. It can crack, and there are no wheels, no big animals, no metal. How do you move it? The island's stories had an answer. The statues walked for a long time. That was just a story. Then people started testing it. Researchers and local teams tried rocking them, tilting, using ropes to pull one side, then the other, making the statue pivot. With a rhythm, a coordinated effort, a moai could be made to walk forward. A swaying motion. It takes skill, unity, but not a huge amount of pulling force. It turns dragging into a question of balance, and in the quarry you can see the ambition frozen. There are unfinished statues still part of the rock. They show every step from the first outline to almost done. One statue, they call it El Gigant. It would have been 70 feet tall, weighed 270 tons. A project that went beyond what they could do. Then there are the Punku, the separate top knots for some moai. These red stone cylinders could weigh 10 tons more. You have to carve the head precisely to hold it, then lift it, place it on top of a standing moai. That's another layer of logistics. The eye sockets too. Carved with care, made to hold inlaid eyes of coral and obsidian, to bring the figure to life during ceremony. This was a society that put its whole identity into this stonework. The scale of it, it means an organized community, planning, feeding people, motivating a workforce for generations. It shows what human determination can do. With clever physics, patient skill, what it can move across the earth. If a community on the most isolated island could do that, then what about a project that didn't just move stone, but had to work with the flow of water? On a continental scale, we started with the Trilithon stones at Baalbek. That was a transport puzzle, but to see the real ambition, you have to go down the road. Into the quarry, there's a stone there still in its bed, the stone of the pregnant woman. It's a single block of limestone. The weight estimate is 1,650 tons. That's heavier than a fully loaded Boeing 747. It's the largest known worked stone from antiquity, ever, and it wasn't just cut, it was shaped. The sides are dressed, the top is flat and level. It was ready to be moved, and then it wasn't. It's just lying there, a project frozen in time. The logistics of just quarrying it are staggering. How do you detach a block that size from the living rock without it shattering? The evidence points to patience and fire. Workers would cut channels around the intended block. Then they'd light fires along those channels. Once the rock was superheated, they'd pour water or vinegar on it. The sudden thermal shock would fracture the limestone along the line. It's a controlled violence, a testament to understanding the material. But quarrying is only step one. The real impossibility starts when you try to move it. The intended route from the quarry to the temple platform is about 900 meters, just over half a mile, and it's not flat. It has a gentle incline. Modern engineers have run the numbers. To overcome friction on a lubricated track, Moving that mass would require a pulling force equal to the strength of tens of thousands of men. The coordination would have to be flawless. A single misstep, a snapped rope, and the stone could crush everything in its path. The traction required defies practical organization. And even if you could muster the workforce, feeding them, housing them, managing them for a project of years, that becomes its own kind of miracle. So we're left with the stone. And the question, why even attempt it? The Trilithon stones were already a statement of unimaginable power. This was something else. This was a leap into a realm of engineering that seems almost mythological. Some researchers say it was never meant to be moved in one piece. Maybe it was a demonstration piece, a show of ultimate capability, or maybe it was meant to be split into smaller blocks. But its finished surfaces suggest otherwise. It feels like a goal, a target, a declaration. The motive here goes past the practical. It enters the realm of the symbolic. The divine. To build on this scale is to communicate with gods, with eternity, with rival empires. It says we command the very bones of the earth. Our will can reshape the landscape itself. This drive to build beyond any functional need, to touch the limits of the possible, that's a thread connecting these sites. It makes you wonder about structures whose purpose wasn't to house the dead or honor the gods, but to serve a function so precise it required a different kind of genius. A genius of alignment and observation written across the open sky. The ocean has its ruins. Down off Yonaguni, Japan, the seafloor just falls away into this landscape. You go down into clear water and you see what looks like a sunken city, massive terraces like giant steps, wide flat platforms, sharp 90-degree angles. Pillars, something that looks like a triangular arch, the whole formation. The Yonaguni Monument is over 160 feet long, 80 feet tall. It sits about 80 feet down and it asks this profound question: is it natural or something human swallowed by the sea? The debate is intense, unresolved. On one side, geologists point to the bedrock. It's sandstone, and sandstone in this region has strong horizontal layers and vertical joints. Over thousands of years, powerful underwater currents can erode along those natural lines. A process called tidal scouring. It can produce these remarkably geometric shapes. The terraces could be harder layers of rock resisting erosion, while softer layers wash away. The right angles could just be where two natural fracture lines meet. From that view, Yonaguni is nature's own architecture, a masterpiece of random, precise geology. But other researchers, some archaeologists, they see details that challenge that. They point to features that seem deliberate, two tall, pillar-like stones close together. Some say it looks like a ceremonial gate. What look like carved channels, what might be tool marks on certain surfaces. Most compelling to some are the steps on the main terrace. They're remarkably uniform in height and depth. A regularity that feels designed for human use. One of the monument's most vocal investigators, the late Professor Masaaki Kimura, spent years mapping the site. He argued that the combination of right angles, flat platforms, symmetrical structures, it was far beyond what natural forces could do alone. He believed he found evidence of carvings. Animals, even a human face, though those claims are heavily disputed. The precision, if it's artificial, that's what captures you. To shape something that massive underwater would imply a civilization with advanced stoneworking skills. Operating when sea levels were much lower, potentially over 10,000 years ago. That timeline would rewrite the conventional understanding of early human development in the Pacific. It expands the search for ancient precision to a new frontier, the seabed. If a culture could master monumental stonework on land, could they also have built where the water is now? Yonaguni is an aquatic riddle, a place where geology and the possibility of human history blur into one. It suggests the planet's greatest engineering mysteries might not all be on dry land. Some could be waiting in the silent, sunlit blue, where the stones are worn smooth by millennia of tides, guarding their secret with perfect, enigmatic geometry. The desert has its own kind of water, a slow erosion from wind and sand. But in Jordan, there's a canyon where the stone flows the other way. You walk through this narrow, winding passage, the sick, with cliffs above you. Then it opens and you see it, the treasury of Petra, carved right into the rose-red cliff. It's not built, it's revealed. The whole facade, over 130 feet high, was sculpted from the top down. That's subtractive architecture. The Nabateans didn't place stones, they removed everything that wasn't the treasury. The precision is different. It's artistic, but it's rooted in engineering. Before they even started, planners had to see the finished structure inside the living rock. They began at the highest point, carving down in stages. That top-down method was critical. It kept debris from damaging the work below. It let them keep checking the grand design. The symmetry is breathtaking. Columns, capitals, pediments, statues, all perfectly balanced. The details, the floral friezes, the urn at the top, show a mastery of stone that feels like delicate pottery. But this sandstone, it looks soft. It's actually fragile. To get this lasting detail, the Nabateans mastered their environment. They understood the rock's grain, its weaknesses. Their tools were simple: iron chisels, hammers, wooden wedges, but their technique was sophisticated. They worked with the stone, not against it, and this artistry was protected by another kind of genius: water. Petra is in a desert, but it gets flash floods. The Nabateans engineered the whole city as a water catchment system. They carved channels into the cliffs, built dams, created cisterns. At the treasury, you can see how the facade was shaped to direct rainwater away from the sculpture. The cliff above was even cut back to create a natural watershed, so water wouldn't cascade down the face. That control of erosion is why the details are still sharp 2,000 years later. The treasury is a perfect fusion. It's a tomb, a temple, but it's also a statement about controlling nature twice. First by sculpting the mountain into art, then by designing the sky to preserve it. That blend of vision and technical mastery in one facade makes you wonder about other places. Where the mountain itself was the canvas, where the goal wasn't just to shape stone, but to tell a story across the skin of the earth. The desert cliffs of Petra show a vision carved into a mountain. But in another desert, along the Nile, a different kind of vision lies trapped within the stone. The unfinished obelisk of Aswan is still in its bed. It's a monument to ambition and to a single, catastrophic flaw. If completed, it would have stood 137 feet tall. It would have weighed nearly 1,200 tons. It's the largest known obelisk ever attempted, and it's a perfect snapshot of a process frozen at the moment of failure. To see it is to walk into an open-air classroom of ancient engineering. The obelisk is not a separate block placed here. It was being freed from the living granite of the quarry floor. Workers had carved a trench around its entire outline. That trench is only about 3 feet wide, just enough for a person to stand in. They didn't use saws or chisels in the way we think. They used dolerite pounders. These are balls of a stone even harder than granite. Teams of workers would stand in those narrow channels, swinging these pounders in rhythm, pulverizing the granite directly beneath them into dust. It's a method of brute force and immense patience. The precision is in the planning. The sides of the trench are remarkably straight and vertical. They had to keep the obelisk's form perfect as they went deeper, meter by meter, over what was likely months of work. Then the crack appeared. A deep fissure ran through the red granite, rendering the entire monolith useless. The project was abandoned instantly. That crack is the most important part of the story. This failure teaches us more than a success ever could. It shows the immense risk these engineers accepted every time they began. Granite is unpredictable. A hidden flaw in the bedrock could doom years of labor. It shows they worked with a clear, sequential plan. They didn't rough out the obelisk and then try to detach it. They carved the precise shape first, then worked to undercut it. This was a calculated, step-by-step operation. The logistics of what would have come next are staggering. If the obelisk hadn't cracked, workers would have eventually tunneled underneath it, inserting wooden beams. Then they would have slowly, carefully separated it from the bedrock below. To move it, they would likely have dragged it on a prepared causeway to the Nile. There, a specially built barge, a vessel of incredible strength, would have been waiting. The obelisk would have been floated down the river, a journey of hundreds of miles. At its destination, perhaps Carnac or Luxor, an earthen ramp would have been built and the obelisk painstakingly hauled upright. The entire endeavor, from first strike to final raising, was a ballet of physics, coordination, and raw human effort. This single, broken stone makes the successfully erected obelisk seem even more miraculous. They are not just symbols of power, they are triumphs of planning over chaos. Each one that stands today represents 1,000 potential failures that were avoided. The unfinished obelisk is a humbling reminder. It tells us that the ancient builders were not infallible magicians. They were master engineers working at the very edge of material science and logistics. They pushed until the stone itself said stop, and in that stopping they left us a direct, tangible connection to their methods, their risks, and their breathtaking ambition. It's a blueprint in negative, showing us the outline of a skill so refined that its successes still pierce the sky. Over in the Gulf Coast lowlands, there's another civilization. The Olmec, they're called the mother culture of Mesoamerica. They were there over 3,000 years ago, and what they left behind, their most famous legacy, isn't a pyramid. It's a set of faces, the colossal heads. 17 of them have been found. Each one is a single, massive block of basalt. They're portraits. They have this stunning individuality. A quiet, imposing power. The precision is artistic, but it comes from understanding the material. Basalt is volcanic stone. It's incredibly dense, hard. To shape it into the curves of a face, the details of a headdress, those distinct expressions, often a grimace, that took more than force. It took a master sculptor. Someone who could see the final form inside the raw stone. The features aren't generic. Each head is unique, a broad nose, full lips, a determined jaw. The headdresses look like helmets or caps. They're decorated with symbols, patterns carved right into the basalt, which suggests these were portraits of specific rulers. Powerful ones. To get this level of detail on this scale, some heads are over 9 feet tall, weighing 20 tons or more. That's a feat. Artistic engineering. Then there's the other half, the journey. The basalt didn't come from the Olmec heartland. The nearest quarries were in the Tuxtla Mountains, dozens of miles away. Through swampy jungle, across rivers, the Olmec had no wheels, no metal tools beyond early Celts, no draft animals. So how do you move a 20-ton sphere of rock that far? The theory involves communal effort, clever logistics. The boulder was likely shaped roughly at the quarry first, to reduce weight, then moved on a wooden sled or rollers. Pulled by hundreds of laborers along prepared causeways. For rivers, they probably used rafts, barges, using the water's buoyancy. The coordination was extraordinary. A symphony of human strength and planning. It turned an impossible task into something they did regularly. The cultural significance is immense. These heads weren't hidden. They were placed in central spaces, ceremonial areas, often in lines or groups facing outward, like eternal guardians, watchers. They were the permanent stone embodiment of authority, of lineage, of a society organized enough to command those resources for a symbolic purpose, not just a practical one. To stand before one, like Head 1 at La Venta, with its serene, watchful expression, is to feel the weight of a gaze that's lasted millennia. It communicates power as clearly as any written decree. The Olmec heads prove the drive for monumental precision wasn't confined to the Old World. Here, in the Americas, a civilization unlocked the secrets. Moving and shaping multi-ton stone to create enduring portraits, they turned leaders into legends, rock into memory. That mastery raises a parallel. If the Olmec could do this with basalt, what about other American cultures? Similar feats with different materials, in different landscapes, for purposes that went beyond portraiture, into the cosmos itself. A portrait in stone carries the weight of earthly power. But in another place, stone was shaped for something else, to hold against the fury of war. In Greece, in the Peloponnese, there's the citadel of Tiryns. It rises from the plain. Its walls aren't elegant, they're raw, overwhelming. They're built from limestone boulders, each one colossal. Some are estimated to weigh over 10 tons. They're stacked one on another in a style so massive that later Greeks, the classical Greeks who saw the ruins, had an explanation. They called them Cyclopean walls. Built by the one-eyed giants of myth, because only giants, they thought, could lift stones like that. The Mycenaeans built this fortress palace in the late Bronze Age, over 3,000 years ago. They were a warrior culture, the people of Agamemnon from the Homeric stories, and their engineering reflected that world. The walls of Tiryns were pure defense. Monumental defense. The precision here isn't about smooth joins. It's about stability, about brute force geometry. The builders chose these enormous, irregular boulders and fitted them together without mortar. They used smaller stones to fill the gaps, but the real strength came from the way each massive block was chosen and placed to lock with the ones around it. The walls taper as they rise, creating a slope, structurally sound and intimidating. To stand at the base is to feel a sense of immovability. This was a fortress meant to last. Inside these walls, another precision shows itself, the corbelled archway. It's a hallmark of Mycenaean engineering. To make a passage or a roof, they didn't use a true arch with a keystone. Instead, they built by stacking horizontal courses of stone, each one cantilevered slightly inward over the one below. Step by step, the walls lean in until they meet at the top. The famous Lion Gate at Mycenae uses this method. At Tiryns, long, tunnel-like galleries were built into the thickness of the walls with the same corbelled technique. These passages are dark, imposing, geometrically perfect in their execution. They show a masterful understanding of load distribution, of how to create space within sheer mass. This was Bronze Age Greek engineering at its most powerful, practical, born from necessity in a time of rival kingdoms and conflict. The knowledge required how to quarry such boulders, how to move them, how to fit them in a stable, interlocking pattern. That knowledge was clearly systematic, passed down through generations of builders, but it makes you wonder, where did that knowledge begin? The Mycenaean civilization didn't emerge in a vacuum. Could some of this understanding of megalithic construction have come from older cultures? From trade with the Minoans of Crete, or from whispers of techniques that traveled across the Mediterranean from places like Egypt or Anatolia? The Cyclopean walls stand as a testament to a localized, defensive application of a global idea. That stone, handled with understanding, can create the unassailable. This drive to build the impervious, though, leads to a pivot. What happens when that same monumental effort, that same precise understanding of stone, is directed not at keeping enemies out, but at perhaps letting something else in? When the goal shifts from defense to a connection with forces far less tangible than an invading army, the walls of Tiryns were built for power, earthly power. But in Brittany, along that coast, the stones were placed for something else, a different kind of power, the Carnac alignments. They stretch across the countryside. Like an army, a silent army resting over 3,000 standing stones, menhirs, in long rows, precise rows. Some rows go on for miles, and you walk among them. You're dwarfed not by one monument but by the scale, the repetitive scale. It doesn't feel like a building, it feels like a diagram, a giant's diagram drawn on the earth with granite. The challenge wasn't moving one impossible weight. It was replication, placement on the scale of the landscape. Each menhir had to be quarried, transported, erected. Some are over 20 feet tall, that required a communal understanding, leverage, balance. To raise one, they'd dig a pit, tilt the stone in with ropes and levers, then haul it upright, pack the base with stones for stability. Doing that once is a feat. Doing it thousands of times, in geometric patterns, that speaks to a society with a vision. An organized, persistent vision, one that spanned generations. But why? What was the purpose of this stone forest? The theories are numerous as the stones. For centuries, legend said it was a Roman legion, turned to stone by a wizard. Modern archaeology looks for tangible answers. One idea is an observatory. A colossal astronomical observatory. Archaeoastronomers have studied the site. They see the primary rows are aligned to the rising and setting sun at the solstices. Certain stones mark lunar standstills, the extreme points of the moon's cycle. The precision suggests long-term observation. It was a calendar in stone, tracking the seasons, predicting celestial events, governing agricultural and ceremonial rhythms. Other researchers propose a terrestrial function. Geologists note the major fault lines run parallel to the stone rows. The megaliths could have been a seismic detector placed on unstable ground. During small tremors, they'd sway or tilt, their movement interpreted as messages from the earth. Another theory sees a sacred pathway, a processional route for rituals, connecting the living, the ancestors, and the cosmos. What unites these theories is the intentionality. The stones are not random. Their placement required forethought, surveying, a shared cultural goal that transcended individual lifetimes. To stand at one end of the grand menhir alignment, to look down its length, you feel part of a line of sight, a line that extends from the earth into the heavens. Its architecture as an interface, a means of conversing with forces larger than humanity. This connection between stone and sky, it finds its purest expression somewhere else, a place where the architecture becomes an instrument for capturing the light of the cosmos. On just one day each year, the stones at Carnac, they run in a line, straight out to the horizon. But then you have another shape, a circle, a perfect circle. Stonehenge, it sits out on the plain, weathered. You know it when you see it. But if you just see a ring of stones, you're missing the engineering, the story in the stone itself. This was built over 1,000 years in phases. The last big phase was the Sarsens, those giant grey blocks, each one 50 tons. They were dragged from quarries 20 miles off. But getting them there was just the start. The shaping is where you see the precision. They had stone hammers, stone mauls, and with those they worked the surfaces smooth. They gave the uprights a slight taper, wider at the bottom, so they look even bigger from the ground. And then they did the joinery, like woodworking but in 50-ton stone. At the top of each upright they carved 2 knobs, tenons. On the bottom of the lintel, the big crosspiece, they carved the hollows, the mortises. They lifted those lintels. Just lifting them was a feat, and they lowered them down. The tenon fit into the mortise, a stone lock. It was for stability, but it was more than that. It was a statement, and the lintels, they weren't just straight. Each one was curved, so when you put them all side by side on top of the circle, their curves made one continuous ring, a circle of stone floating. That level of work means they knew geometry, they knew stone, and it was for a purpose, an astronomical purpose. The main axis points to the midsummer sunrise. The midwinter sunset. On the solstice, the sun comes up over the heel stone, right into the center of the circle. It's not a rough alignment, it's precise. That took generations of watching the sky, passing that knowledge down. Then there are the blue stones, the smaller ones inside. their journey might be more incredible. They came from Wales, the Preseli Hills, over 150 miles, across mountains, across rivers. How did they move them? Sledges, boats. They moved 80 stones, 4 tons each, across that land. The effort feels sacred. Then, with modern tools, they found something else. Laser scans on the stones. There are carvings, dozens of them, axe heads. Daggers, they're shallow, precise, made by a patient hand. So it wasn't just an observatory, it was a canvas. The symbolism mattered. So what was this for? A society with a cosmic vision. The circle was a model of their world, a place to mark time, to honor cycles, to reach the ancestors. Building it with that precision was an act of devotion. Making the celestial order permanent on the ground. And if one circle took that much, what about all the others? The rings scattered everywhere. Were they local versions of the same idea? Or parts of a bigger landscape, a ritual map we're still trying to read? A circle of stone holds sunlight, but maybe that precision wasn't just for seeing. Maybe it was for hearing. To find that, you go underground, deep under Malta. There's a place carved from silence, the Hypogeum of Halsafliani. It isn't built. It's hollowed out, a city for the dead, excavated from solid limestone over centuries, starting 4,000 years ago. You enter and the light is gone. You go down through 3 levels, a maze of chambers, halls, niches, all carved with care. The walls are smooth, there are shelves cut into the rock. Curved ceilings that copy the temples above. It feels less like a tomb, more like a sacred copy of the world above, made from empty space. The carving is precise, architectural. But the real genius is in the air, in the sound. One chamber, the oracle room. It's a small oval room with a niche in the wall. If you speak into that niche, your voice changes. A deep, resonant tone vibrates through the whole chamber, a frequency that seems to go past the ears into the chest. It's not an echo, it's a sustained hum that fills the room. Acoustic archaeologists have studied it. They say it's no accident. The chamber's dimensions, the wall curvature, the niche depth, all carved to amplify sound at specific frequencies. This was intentional, sonic engineering. The effect in ritual would have been profound. A chant from that niche, a drum beat, it would become an immersive, physical experience. Altering perception, maybe inducing trance. It means the builders understood the physics of sound waves, understood resonance with a sophistication that matches their stonework. They found small clay figurines here. The most famous is the Sleeping Lady, a serene figure on a couch. She was in a deep niche, a place of honor. Her presence, along with thousands of human remains, tells a complex story. This was a place of ceremony and rest, where the community engaged with cycles larger than a single life. The culture that made it, the temple builders of Malta, left no writing. Only these silent halls underground and the echoing proof of their skill. They shaped not just stone but the environment inside it. They engineered a sound experience. A space where a voice could become a vibration, and vibration could become something closer to presence. That mastery of sensory precision, crafting spaces that speak to more than sight, it widens the perspective. If ancient builders could tune a chamber to a frequency, what else did they learn to control? Could the placement of a monument, the choice of material, be part of a larger dialogue with the natural world? One we're only starting to hear. Granite walls coming up from the high ground following the shape of the land. The ruins of Great Zimbabwe cover almost 2 square miles. A city made of stone, built without any mortar. These are the dry stone walls of southern Africa, put up by the Shona people from the 11th to the 15th centuries. The material was granite taken from the hills around it, but they didn't just stack rocks. They changed that granite into thousands of rectangular blocks, each one cut to a regular size and shape. Then they laid them in courses, these rows that go in unbroken lines, following the curves of the bedrock underneath. The walls aren't straight. They're curvilinear, sweeping in these arcs that match the natural curves of the hills, making enclosures and passages. It feels like a flowing, organic kind of architecture. The precision is in the coursing, the evenness of each layer, picking each block carefully to keep that smooth, level line as the wall turns. It shows a standardized technique, a knowledge the masons all shared. This was a capital, a center for trade and politics and spiritual life for a powerful kingdom, connected to networks that went all the way to the Indian Ocean coast. The logistics to build it were huge, getting the granite, shaping it right there, organizing the labor. It all points to a structured society with people doing specific jobs. A clear example of that skill is the conical tower. It's inside the great enclosure, a solid tower more than 30 feet tall. It wasn't for looking out or for storage. Its purpose was probably symbolic, maybe standing for grain or a spiritual link to abundance and authority. Structurally, it's a marvel of dry stone work. The walls taper perfectly as they go up, keeping their stability and that beautiful, consistent coursing all the way to the top. It's a monument to control. Control over the material, over the form, and over the message of power it sent to anyone who saw it. The walls of Great Zimbabwe speak of a civilization that mastered its environment through geometry and patient skill, organizing stone and society into something complex, something that lasted. This level of urban sophistication, this deliberate planning of space for ceremony and commerce and community, it wasn't only in Africa. Across the Atlantic, in the heart of another continent, a city was being laid out with a different kind of precision. One that mapped the cosmos itself onto the streets where people lived. Teotihuacan sits quiet in Mexico, a grid of stone and earth laid out with a kind of mathematical precision. And at its center is the Pyramid of the Sun, a human-made mountain. It's over 200 feet tall. The base is larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. The volume is just staggering, millions of tons of adobe brick faced with stone and plaster. But the real point isn't just the mass, it's the intention. The whole city is a masterwork of planning, aligned with a cosmic precision. The central axis is the Street of the Dead, a wide ceremonial avenue miles long, lined with platforms and temples. And this street doesn't point to a cardinal direction. It's aligned 15.5 degrees east of true north. Archaeoastronomers have an answer. That alignment points to the setting sun on 2 specific days each year, dates that would have marked important cycles in the calendar. The Pyramid of the Sun is placed so that on those days, from a specific point on the street, the sun sets directly behind its peak. This was a city engineered as a clock, a calendar, a sacred landscape. The architecture shows a standardized knowledge. They used the talud table row style. Each tier has 2 parts, a sloping panel, the talud, and above it a vertical, framed panel, the table row. It creates a rhythmic, stepped look, but it wasn't just for looks. This design was consistent across the city, in temples large and small. It means the builders worked from a shared blueprint, a common architectural language. The construction was a feat of organized labor. The core is adobe, sun-dried mud brick, millions of them, made by countless workers in a coordinated process. Then faced with stone coated in plaster and once painted in brilliant colors, the logistics of feeding and directing that population point to a highly structured society. And yet, for all its grandeur, the builders are a mystery. We don't know what they called themselves. Their language is lost, no deciphered written records. By the time the Aztecs arrived centuries later, the city was already an ancient ruin. They gave it the name we use today, Teotihuacan, the place where the gods were created. They believed it was a divine site built by giants. The silence of its creators makes the precision of their work more profound. A legacy left in geometry and alignment, not in words. A civilization that expressed its understanding of the world through the placement of mountains of earth and stone. this drive to shape the landscape into a cosmic diagram. This monumental urban precision, it finds a parallel in the Americas, in a place where the mountains themselves were the raw material for a city that defies belief. The standard was Giza, that smooth, geometric perfection, but that didn't happen all at once. To see the experiment, you go south to Dosha, and there's the bent pyramid. A structure caught between two ideas. The lower half rises at a steep angle, 54 degrees, then it shifts. The upper part continues at 43 degrees. So you get this bend, a kink in the skyline. It wasn't a mistake, it was a pivot, adaptation, frozen in stone. The construction is still breathtaking. A lot of the original casing is still there, that smooth Chora limestone. You can run a hand along it. That's 4th dynasty ambition. The blocks are fitted with care. The joints are tight, the faces are flat. This wasn't sloppy. It was a deliberate project, the highest quality, all the skill they had, so why the bend? The main theory is structural, pragmatism. The builders under Sneferu may have hit instability. The steep angle put too much weight on the core, on the foundation. Cracks might have started. To stop a collapse, they corrected. Mid-construction, they reduced the angle for the top. Less stress, let them finish it safely. It shows their engineering intuition to see a problem and innovate while the work is going. But there are other views. Some see symbolism. The angle change could be deliberate. A dual meaning. The steep lower part might align with the sun god Ra's rays. The gentler top could connect to the stars or another part of the solar journey. The inside layout supports a complex purpose. It's not simple passageways. The bent pyramid has two entrances, north and west. They lead to two separate sets of chambers. With corbelled ceilings high above, this intricate design, almost redundant, it suggests experimentation, trying different formulas for the king's afterlife. Egyptologists see it as the crucial link between the stepped pyramids and the true smooth-sided ones at Giza. It's the physical record of learning. Sneferu built this one, and also the Red Pyramid at Dosha. The first successful smooth-sided pyramid. The bent pyramid was the trial. The Red Pyramid was the result, that progression from bent to flawless geometry. It shows a civilization mastering physics, mathematics, large-scale management. This experiment, honest in its adaptation, it reminds you these wonders weren't born perfect. They came through risk, observation, sometimes compromise. The bent pyramid is a monument to problem-solving on a colossal scale. It's the moment before the formula was locked in. And it makes you wonder about other ancient structures, the ones that don't fit any formula, that resist our categories so completely, they seem to belong to a different reality. Gunung Padang is this terraced pyramid shape in Indonesia. It's built from stone columnar basalt, andesite blocks arranged in 5 levels. It looks like a hill. But under the surface, some researchers say it's something else. They've done surveys, ground-penetrating radar, electrical resistivity, and the data suggests it's not natural. They say it's a man-made structure with chambers inside, hollow cavities. Then there's the core drilling. They took samples from deep down. They found organic material there and they carbon dated it. That dated comes back to over 20,000 years, which is far older than anyone thinks civilization was there. It's older than the last ice age. Now, mainstream archaeology doesn't accept this. They're deeply skeptical. Their view is that it's a natural volcanic hill, that people later came and modified it, turned it into a ceremonial site a few thousand years ago. They question the dating. They say that ancient material could have moved naturally, shifted over time. It wasn't necessarily placed there by people, so the debate is intense. It's a clash, established timelines against radical new evidence, and the site, it's not just about the stones. It's about time. How do we validate history? What evidence is enough to rewrite a textbook? Gunung Padang is a case study in that process. Discovery happens at the edges of what we know. It requires an open mind, not belief, but a willingness to follow evidence, even to uncomfortable questions. That openness is essential, because the next site, it doesn't just challenge timelines. It seems to defy the physics of the stone itself. There's a hill in the Spanish plain. It looks natural, just a gentle rise in the land, but inside there's a hidden shape. The Dolmen of Menga. It's a Neolithic tomb, a burial mound built over 5,000 years ago. The scale of it is humbling. You walk down a long entrance corridor, these upright stone slabs, and then you enter the main chamber. The space is vast, and above you, resting on these massive stone pillars, is a single capstone, one slab. It weighs 180 tons, that's the roof. A roof made from a piece of a mountain. The engineering is a masterpiece of post and lintel construction. It's the simplest form, the most stable, but at this scale, nothing is simple. The uprights, the posts, they're colossal. They were set into carefully dug pits, their bases leveled for a stable foundation, and the capstone, the lintel, was dragged and somehow lifted, inch by inch, to rest across the tops of those pillars. The precision is in the fit. The contact points were shaped, the surfaces dressed to distribute that weight evenly. A miscalculation of a few inches, and the stone would have cracked or the pillars would have shifted. They didn't. It's held for millennia. Then there's the alignment. The long axis of the dolmen points directly toward a mountain peak on the horizon, La Peña de los Enamorados. That wasn't a random choice. For the builders, the mountain likely held spiritual significance, a natural monument linking the living with the ancestors. The tomb becomes a conduit, a stone pathway oriented toward a sacred geography. It shows a deep relationship with the world. They weren't just placing stones. They were integrating their structure into the fabric of the earth and sky. The logistics boggle the mind. The capstone and uprights are a local sandstone, but they still had to be moved from the quarry. The method would have been communal, a symphony of human effort. They likely used wooden rollers, ropes from plant fibers, earthen ramps, hundreds of people pulling in unison, guided by foremen with levers and shouts. A slow, deliberate ballet of physics and will. The sound must have been immense, the groan of wood, the grating of stone, the rhythmic chanting. To dedicate that effort to a resting place speaks volumes. This was a society that invested its greatest labors not in palaces for the living, but in houses for the departed. It suggests a worldview where the ancestors remained a powerful, present force. Worthy of monumental honor, the Dolmen of Menga combines brute strength with careful alignment, communal effort with spiritual purpose. It forces a question. Why would a community, with all the daily challenges of survival, pour generations of labor into moving mountains of stone for those who had passed? The answer is in the meaning they attached to the journey beyond life. These tombs weren't endpoints, they were portals, statements of continuity. By building something that would last forever, they anchored their lineage to the land itself. The sheer permanence of the stone was a defiance of time, a way to ensure memory endured. That Herculean effort, repeated across continents, points to a shared human impulse. To reach beyond the temporary, to touch the eternal through the only medium strong enough to carry that dream, stone itself. And if such effort was made for the journey after life, what staggering projects might have been undertaken for the living? To harness the very forces of nature, there's a place in China deep underground. It's not something built up, it's something carved down, the Longyou Caves. They're a network of caverns, but they're not natural. They were hand-excavated from solid sandstone. The scale is just staggering. So far, 24 caverns have been found. Each one is immense. Some are as tall as a 10-story building. They cover areas larger than a football field, and every single inch shows the mark of a tool. The walls, the ceilings, the massive pillars left there for support, they're all covered in a uniform pattern. Parallel chisel marks. These marks aren't random. They run in consistent bands like a deliberate texture, applied with a machine-like rhythm across thousands of square feet of rock. The angles where the walls meet are sharp. Precise, the pillars are spaced at regular intervals, a grid of stone holding up the mountain. This is architecture in reverse. It feels like someone decided to sculpt empty space from the heart of the earth. The first question is the most basic one. Who did this and why? There are no historical records, no carvings, no artifacts, no mention in any local chronicle. The caves were discovered in the 1990s. Villagers pumped water out of what they thought were small ponds, and they revealed these colossal man-made chambers. The engineering alone suggests a massive, organized effort. Archaeologists estimate that moving all that stone would have required 1,000 people, working around the clock for 6 years straight, and yet there's no trace of that workforce, no settlement large enough to support it, and no clear purpose for the space. Theories range from imperial tombs to mining operations to secret military bases, but none of them fit perfectly. The precision, the decorative chisel marks, they argue against simple quarrying. The open, pillar-supported halls suggest a space meant to be occupied, meant to be seen. Then there's the second question, equally puzzling: where did all the stone go? The volume of sandstone removed is estimated at over 1 million cubic meters. That's enough rock to build a small mountain somewhere else. But no corresponding structure made from this distinctive stone has ever been found in the region. It simply vanished. This missing mountain of stone is a ghost in the equation, a physical impossibility that deepens the enigma. The engineering inside the caves is sophisticated. The pillars aren't just decorative, they're critical roof support placed with an understanding of load distribution. The ceilings are carved at a consistent angle, which researchers believe helped with structural stability. And even more impressively, the builders included a complex drainage system. The floors were carved with gentle slopes and channels. They lead to sump pits. This ensured the caverns wouldn't flood despite being carved below the water table. This shows foresight. This wasn't a haphazard dig. It was a planned, engineered project. Designed to last, to stand in one of these silent halls is to feel the weight of a vanished intention. Those rhythmic chisel marks on every surface become a kind of language. A persistent, patient statement of human effort, but one we cannot read. It forces a confrontation with scale, not just of space, but of historical memory. How does a project of this magnitude, requiring that much skill and coordination, simply disappear from history? It suggests that our records are fragments. That civilizations can rise, undertake works that bend the landscape to their will, and then fade, leaving only the hollow spaces behind as a question. The Longyou Caves are a testament to that persistent human drive to reshape the world. Even when the reason is lost to time, they echo something we've seen elsewhere. The capacity for monumental, precise work, divorced from the practical needs we usually attribute to ancient peoples. It's a reminder that history isn't just what is written. It's what is carved, and sometimes the most profound statements aren't made by piling stone high, but by the careful, deliberate act of taking it away. There were these stone spheres found in Costa Rica in the river deltas. They'd been hidden under the jungle for centuries. They're called the Diqui spheres. Their sizes vary. Some you could hold, others are massive, over 2 meters wide, weighing 16 tons or more. But it's the shape, they're not just round. They're precise. Archaeologists have taken measurements. The circumference across the whole surface is often consistent, within a centimeter or two. That's a level of accuracy you'd expect from machine tools, and the material is granodiorite, a very hard volcanic stone. The Diqui's culture made them. A pre-Columbian people, they lived there from about 800 to 1500 CE. The question is how? How do you carve a perfect sphere from that kind of rock using stone tools? It probably started with choosing the right boulder, one with the proper grain. Then, the method researchers talk about involves heat, controlled fires built against the stone, then doused with water. The thermal shock would make flakes pop off. That was for the rough shape. The finishing work came after, using harder hammer stones to peck away at the surface. Rotating the sphere constantly, checking the form against some sort of template, it was an act of patience, of spatial reasoning, to hold the idea of a perfect sphere in your mind and then to extract it from the stone. That's a profound intellectual feat. But then, why? What was their purpose? The theories vary. Some see an astronomical function that, placed in certain alignments, they could mark solstices or equinoxes. A permanent calendar on the landscape. Others see social symbols, markers of authority, placed in a chief's plaza or near important dwellings. Their size and perfection would communicate power. They might have stood for celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, linking earthly power to the cosmos. They were discovered in the 1930s, when the United Fruit Company cleared land for banana plantations. Many were moved from their original sites, so any patterns they once formed were scrambled. Now they sit in parks, in town squares, a silent diaspora of perfect forms severed from their context. These spheres offer a different view of ancient precision. It's not just about moving weight or aligning to stars, though it might involve that. It's about the mastery of form itself. The pursuit of an ideal shape, a geometric truth made permanent. This drive to manifest perfection, whether in a 2-ton sphere or a 2-million-ton pyramid, points to a shared human impulse. To take the chaos of the natural world and impose an order on it, an order that reflects our understanding, our beliefs, our reach for something beyond the everyday. It's a quieter monumentality, but no less profound, and it makes you wonder, if ancient cultures could achieve this level of precision in stone across the globe, in isolation, what does that collective accomplishment suggest? Not about a shared origin of people, but perhaps a shared origin of knowledge. The final structure is quiet. It's on the plains of Pasargadae in Iran. The tomb of Cyrus the Great. After pyramids, after multi-ton blocks, this mausoleum feels modest, but its precision is masterful. A simple gabled chamber on a stepped limestone platform. The beauty is in the execution. This is ashlar masonry at its finest. Each block is a perfect rectangular prism. The faces are smooth, the edges sharp. They're laid in perfectly horizontal courses. The joints are so tight, so uniform, they look drawn with a ruler. The stones were cut with such exactitude that no mortar was needed. The structure holds together through geometry and gravity. It's a lesson in refined restraint, built in the 6th century before the Common Era. It commemorates Cyrus, founder of the Achaemenid Empire. The context is profound, a ruler who conquered vast territories, yet chose a resting place of elegant simplicity. The design is earthquake-resistant. The platform is solid, low to the ground, that provides immense stability. The chamber is small and robust. Its gabled roof distributes weight efficiently. It was built to last, and it has. For over 2,500 years, through countless tremors, it has stood virtually intact. That longevity isn't an accident. It's the product of learned technique. The builders of Cyrus's tomb didn't need to reinvent the wheel. They had millennia of stoneworking knowledge at their disposal. They understood how to select stone, how to cut it, how to fit it. They applied that knowledge not for sheer monumental impact, but for enduring dignity. This structure is a fitting culmination. We moved from the impossible mass of Baalbek to the celestial geometry of Stonehenge, from the artistic curves of the Olmec heads to the sonic chambers of Malta. And we end here with a tomb that embodies megalithic precision. It's not about being the biggest, it's about being perfectly, thoughtfully made. It represents the distillation of a global craft. The techniques of fitting stone without mortar, aligning blocks with celestial events, designing for permanence, all these threads converge in this quiet, dignified building. It shows that by this point, the mastery of stone wasn't just about power or mystery. It was also about legacy, about creating something so precisely engineered it would become a permanent part of the landscape. A final, silent statement from a great king, written not in words but in impeccably cut limestone. This tomb asks us to consider what we've seen across 25 structures. If such diverse cultures, separated by continents and centuries, all arrived at this level of technical skill, what does that collective achievement truly mean? When you look at the map, these sites start to form a pattern. It's not just about how big they are, it's a specific set of signatures, a kind of technical language written in stone. First, there's the joinery, polygonal masonry. You see it in Peru, in Japan, in Greece. Stones cut into these irregular shapes that lock together, no mortar. A perfect fit that resists earthquakes. Then there's the sky. From Stonehenge to Teotihuacan to Carnac, the stones speak to the sun, the moon, the stars. They're permanent observatories, calendars made of rock. Another thread is sound, that resonant chamber in Malta's Hypogeum. That wasn't an accident, it was engineered. A space tuned to a specific frequency, one that could alter a state of mind, and the materials themselves, a preference for the hardest stones, granite, basalt, andesite. Materials that take extraordinary effort to shape, yet they were chosen again and again for their permanence. So you have this pattern, and the question is, what does it mean? How do you explain these common threads across oceans and across millennia? Scholars generally point to three possibilities. The first is independent discovery. Human minds faced with similar challenges, how to build something lasting, how to mark time, how to connect with the divine, they arrived at similar, elegant solutions. It's convergent cultural evolution. The second is knowledge transfer. A slow, gradual diffusion of ideas along ancient trade routes. A stonemason's trick passing from one generation to the next, traveling from Egypt to Mycenae, or from Mesopotamia to the Indus Valley over centuries. The third possibility is more controversial. It suggests a common source, a much older, perhaps lost, foundational civilization, or a body of sophisticated knowledge that fragmented and was carried to different parts of the world after some cataclysm. That's the forgotten chapter hypothesis. The evidence doesn't give a simple verdict. The independent discovery argument is strong for many sites. The Olmec had no contact with the Inca, yet both moved multi-ton stone with brilliant logistics. But other parallels make you pause. The specific technique of beveled edges on polygonal stones, seen at Sacsayhuamán, shows up in other, distant megalithic works. The astronomical alignments are often too precise to be coincidental. They're based on complex cycles that require generations of observation. That doesn't prove a single teacher. But it does suggest a deep, perhaps shared, preoccupation with cosmic order. Maybe the most compelling synthesis is that all three factors played a role. Local cultures, with their own genius, independently pushed the boundaries of what was possible. They occasionally exchanged ideas through long-distance contact, adopting and adapting techniques that worked. And beneath it all, maybe there was an earlier, rudimentary understanding of geometry, astronomy, and stonework, a kind of proto-science from humanity's deep past that provided a seed. A seed that grew into different, yet strangely familiar, forms around the globe, and that leaves the big, haunting question: do these structures, and the hundreds like them, point to a gap in our story? Not a story of aliens or Atlantis, but a human story. A chapter where societies achieved a technical harmony with their environment, so refined that its remnants still baffle us. A chapter that was lost to time, to climate shifts, to the rise and fall of empires. What if our timeline of human progress isn't a smooth, upward curve, but a series of peaks and valleys? With some peaks so ancient their traces are almost erased, leaving only these impossible stones as silent markers. they stand as a collective challenge to our assumptions, inviting us to look deeper, to question more openly, and to wonder what other chapters of human ingenuity are still waiting quietly to be read. These stones aren't just monuments. They're a question set into the landscape of time. We've seen 25 structures, from deserts to jungles, from mountains to the ocean floor. And they share a family resemblance, not in style but in skill. The skill to move mountains, the skill to fit stone with a jeweler's precision, the skill to align a building with the stars. This journey shows a pattern of impossible engineering, a chorus of ancient voices all speaking the same technical language. They talk about lost techniques, where the process of construction is gone and only the perfect product remains. They talk about incredible scale, an ambition that seems to defy the limits of their time. And they talk about mind-boggling precision, a geometric and astronomical accuracy that feels like it's from a future age. In our modern world, with computers and mega machinery, we assume a linear progression. We think we're at the peak of technical achievement, but these silent stones from the deep past demand humility. They remind us that ingenuity isn't just for the present. That human minds, with patience and observation, could solve problems of physics and logistics, problems that still give pause to our best engineers today. Our technology is different, but the creative spark, the drive to reshape the world, is ancient. It endures. One archaeologist, after a lifetime of study, said something simple. He said, "We're not discovering the past, we're in conversation with it." And these megaliths are the most stubborn participants in that dialogue. They don't give up their secrets easily. They ask us to reconsider what we know, to expand our sense of the possible. They testify to a drive, the human spirit's drive to build the impossible. Not just for necessity, but for meaning, to reach for the eternal using the most permanent material they could find. So we leave this with you. Look at the night sky. Think of the stones below that were placed to mirror it. Which of the 25 captured your imagination? The silent walk of the Moai, the cosmic clock of Teotihuacan, or the engineered silence of Malta's Hypogeum? Share your thoughts. If you want more journeys into history's puzzles, subscribe. Join us as we pull on the threads of the past. For now, picture one final image, a single, immense block of stone on a forgotten plain, its edges sharp against a sky full of stars. It's a testament, a question, and a permanent invitation to wonder.